What's up, comic book fans? It's the Emerald Enthusiast of the Multiverse Musings Podcast Network. Here with a look at the McFarlane DC Multiverse Figure 2-pack of Superman and Batman from The Dark Knight Returns. I recently saw this 2-pack on clearance, and since I'm a huge fan of the Frank Miller story, I decided to pick this up for a review. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the package details now. Here's the bottom front of the packaging. It says DC Multiverse, and I like that it doesn't just say Superman and Batman. It says Superman versus Armored Batman. I appreciate the fact that they tailored the packaging to the story. On the side of the packaging, it says Superman versus Armored Batman, and we get a partial window. On the bottom, we get product information. On the side, it says Superman versus Armored Batman from Batman The Dark Knight Returns. And on the top, we get a partial window where you can see both of the figures. And once again, it says Batman The Dark Knight Returns. On the back bottom, we get small action shots of some of the other figures available from McFarlane. On the back top, we get this excellent action shot of Superman and Batman. Here are the figures as seen through the front window. McFarlane did a superb job at capturing the Frank Miller style for these figures. I really like the overall look of the packaging. However, if I do see one issue, it's that mint-on card collectors may be a little disappointed by the fact that you can't really see the accessories well in the package. There are a couple of bases behind these figures, and you can kind of see here the outline of the Batman card, but you really can't see those mint in package. So again, for some mint-on card collectors, they may be a little disappointed with that. But now I think it's time to bust these figures out of the package and see what's inside. Here is the inner cardboard tray, and as you can see, there are two individual black circular peg bases, as well as this double figure base that looks like rubble. Here are the two cards of Batman and Superman. Here's a close-up of the Superman card. Here is a close-up of the Armored Batman card. I am certainly not a fan of this. As you can see, the peg base is taped to the back of the card. And this isn't a mistake because this is the case with both cards. So I'm going to slowly and very carefully, hopefully get this tape off without damaging the card. Yeah, okay, I was able to do so, but I certainly don't like that practice at all. Here are the figures free of the outer packaging, but still in the inner plastic. And while I'm here, this gives me an opportunity to talk about how I safely get figures out of packaging. As you can see here, the capes go through the back of the plastic. And for a lot of people, they just are very careful when they pull the figure out. And of course, you can do that if you take your time. However, I do think that increases the chances of the cape sustaining some damage. So I'm going to show you how I get figures like this safely out of the packaging. So what I've done is I've used a very sturdy pair of scissors here to cut the plastic away from the figure's cape. Obviously, you want to be careful here too. You don't want to scrape it along the cape and do any paint damage to the figure. But this allows me to kind of peel the plastic back and pull the figure out much more easily than if I had tried to just pull him out and then pull this cape through that hole. And here we see Superman and Batman out of the package and ready to rumble in one of the most famous battles in comic book history. Now, if you're a fan of the Frank Miller story, or you just like to collect Batman figures or Superman figures, or you have a large collection of DC Multiverse figures, you will not be sorry if you decide to add these to your collection. There are so many reasons to like these figures in terms of detail and overall construction, and for the most part, articulation, although there are some issues there. But let's go ahead and get a closer look at the loose details of these figures now. Let's have a look at Superman's lower body. And as you can see, the coloring on this is just outstanding. It is so vibrant and eye-catching. I like that quite a bit. The construction of the boots, for the most part, is pretty good. Now, I'll have a little bit to say when I talk about articulation. But you can clearly see like the top of the boot. And as you can see here, you can actually like put your thumbnail here and feel the edge of it. So I do like that. I like all these wrinkles that have been sculpted in. So yeah, lots of detail there. In terms of articulation, I've got to say it's good, but there is one issue in particular. So first of all, we get this mid-foot hinge, and I certainly like that. Although I don't understand why we have these little black pegs instead of why they're not red. Why they couldn't paint that, I don't know. Get this ball joint here at the ankle. So there's lots of good movement. You can get him to turn his foot like this. You can get, a little bit of pivoting back and forth. But I certainly appreciate that. But there is one issue. If you want to get Superman into a flying pose, you can only get the ankle to go back that far. So, I mean, you could angle his feet up like this if you wanted to, with the knees. But you can't get him into a straight-legged pose and then get his feet back the way they should be when he's flying. So some people may be a little disappointed there. Of course, here are the peg holes. That's where you can port the peg bases in. Magnificent sculpting here with the quadriceps. Double-jointed knees. So you can get him into an excellent running pose if you'd like. Now, in terms of articulation with the hips, this is also a little disappointing. You can get him to kick outward pretty far. Now, I didn't expect that. I was pretty impressed there. However, you really can't get him to kick forward very far at all. You can kind of angle it a little bit like this, but that kind of looks weird. Also, this is kind of pliable, the trunks here, so be careful. You don't want to damage those. You can get him to step back, so I'm very happy with that. If you've ever seen my other videos, you know how much I appreciate figures being able to step back like that for poses. So a bit of a mixed bag, but it certainly skews toward the positive for Superman's lower body. Let's look at Batman's lower body now. And earlier in the video, I talked about how well constructed these figures are. And that is true overall, but this figure has one glaring issue. He is not that steady. And that has to do with the fact that he is top heavy, and that's mostly an issue with the cape. So I'll get to that later, but you want to make sure that he's on a base, or that you make sure that he is steady, because this is also a very heavy figure. So you put him on a shelf and he falls over, he could actually take some other figures out with him because he is that bulky and, again, that heavy. So be careful there. But let's go ahead and take a look at the details of the lower body now. So there's plenty of wonderful detail on these boots. As you can see underneath here, made to try to do damage to Superman. I like that a lot. Mid-foot hinge. So that looks really cool. Lots of good articulation here. There is some pivoting. You can actually get it to go forward a little bit and backward a little bit too. Now, it's limited a little bit there, but this is actually pretty pliable here, the top part of this. So I appreciate the construction that went in here. Lots of good detail on these boots, as you can see. And, the knee pad armor here, it doesn't hinder the articulation at all. You still get these double jointed knees, and as you can see, great articulation there. So certainly if you're getting him into a running pose, yeah, not a problem at all. Now, when it comes to the hips, the articulation is a little disappointing. So you can get him to kick out that far, which is, I would say, mediocre at best. You can't really get him to kick very far into like a side kicking pose because this part pushes against the utility belt. So as you can see, I'm getting it up this far, but it's pushing against it here. And that feels like if you try to do that too much, too forcefully, that there's going to be some paint damage somewhere. So be very careful there. However, you can get him to step back like that. So I do appreciate the articulation there. That's something I always appreciate. The texturing on the armor is just outstanding. I mean, it really does look like big, bulky pieces of armor. You can see all the sculpting work here. And I mean, they really differentiated the colors here between, you know, the armored pieces and the suit underneath. So yeah, that just looks outstanding. And I love how the light just kind of dances off of that. So overall, a good job with the lower body. Again, just the problem is this figure is top heavy, so you really need to make sure that he is posed in a safe manner. So let's have a look at Superman's torso now. And there are a couple of issues, but overall, I think it's really attractive. McFarlane really captured just how massive Frank Miller drew Superman. I mean, he looks like a power lifter. He's just jacked to the max. Just, you know, muscles just kind of exploding everywhere. He looks really powerful. Now, however, I will say I think there's some issues here with the abdominals. First of all, they're kind of overly smooth here at the top. And when you articulate it, which I do appreciate that amount of articulation, but you can kind of see this gap here. So that's a little disappointing. And also the abdominals, they look kind of weird. It's like almost like they're folded over. And, you know, that's not how, like, really defined abdominals work. They don't fold in this manner. So that's a little disappointing. However, there is lower abdominal articulation here, so I certainly appreciate that. As you can see. And again, good articulation up here around, like, where the xiphoid process would be. The way that it moves, certainly appreciate that. Here's a look at the back. Again, you know, a gap here between the upper torso and the abdominals. But again, you can't see it, obviously, because of the cape. I really like how this symbol was done. I mean, this feels like something substantial put over the costume. You can even see the edges of it on the camera here. So that's really impressive. And I like all these, like, little sculpted lines that denote just how tight this is on him, that, you know, the muscles are just, you know, bursting out and the costume's trying to, like, contain it all. So there are, again, some issues here that looks a little weird, but overall, I just really do like this torso. Let's have a look at Batman's torso now, and I think this is really excellent work here. You can see all these little, like, sculpted lines that look like battle damage. Here's the section where the armored piece comes together. See all these little bolts here. That looks really good. And underneath here, you can actually see the uniform just a little bit. And despite the fact that he has the utility belt, he does have movement here at the waist. Here's a look at the back, which you can't really see very well because of the cape. But I know that there will be some people who look at this and say, why isn't there like an ab crunching joint here? I don't think that McFarlane could have done that and had this figure look the way that it should. If you've read the comic or you've seen the animated adaptation, Batman was wearing this massive torso piece of armor to try to withstand blows from Superman. And this is the way that it should look. So I'm fully willing to forego that piece of articulation to have this look the way that it should. Other collectors may feel differently, but I think this is a magnificent piece of work from McFarlane. Let's have a look at Superman's arms now. And I really appreciate this fist. It's sculpted very well. Good definition on the forearm, biceps, triceps, deltoid. That all looks really good. Single jointed elbow. I'm not sure they could have done much more with how thick this figure is. I mean, you can just see you know, how thick all the limbs are. So I think that's the best articulation you could get. You can get his arm to go up that far. 360 degrees of rotation. Get him in a good cocked arm pose there. This arm, much the same. I wish there would have been a bicep swivel, but there is not, so that is one criticism that I have. You can get his arms to go out this far. So I think that's a good amount of articulation there. So pretty good job on the arms. Let's have a look at Batman's arms now. Articulation at the wrist. I really like how these gauntlets look, how shiny they are. There's the bat motif there. I'm not exactly sure why he's pointing. Oh, that's a little tight. There's also swiveling at the elbow here, so I do appreciate that. Good texturing. Little bit of a problem with the articulation here. It's hindered just a little bit by the design. When you push this shoulder piece against the torso, it only goes up so far. And you certainly don't want to force that. You can move it, and there's 360 degrees of rotation. So the articulation isn't bad, but with that one particular pose, you're just very limited. You can get his arms to go out this far, though. Let's have a look at Superman's cape. Certainly like the coloring here. All of these wrinkles that have been sculpted in. Even up here, that looks really good. I like how it's inserted into the costume. And there's this port on the back, so it is held to the figure. Yeah, it's pretty lightweight too. So good effort there. Now this cape, despite how heavy it is, I really do like the texturing. I mean, it looks really good. It just kind of throws the figure off a little bit. But yeah, I really can't complain about aesthetics here. Yeah, you can see just how heavy that it is. I mean, you can almost see that. But it certainly does look good. I just, you know, it does throw the figure's balance off. But it's hard not to like how this looks because it really is attractive. Now, let's have a look at Superman's head. And this head sculpt, they got the jaw right. But I don't know. There's just something really off about the way he looks. I mean, they tried to capture the Frank Miller style, which is, again, very stylized. They certainly got the hair, but I don't know. There's just something kind of monstrous about the way that his face looks. You can get him to look side to side. You can get him to look up. And I do appreciate that. That's a good amount of articulation there. You can get him to look down. You can get his head to tilt. And, of course, I'm always appreciative of that. The hair looks really good. But, yeah, there's just something off about this head sculpt. It's certainly not my favorite. Now, this Batman head sculpt, I really appreciate this. Despite how, like, thick this helmet part is, it does have good articulation. As you can see, I really like how reflective the armor is. I like the expression. The skin tone looks good. You can actually get his head to go up that far. You can get it to tilt. I didn't expect that. Believe there's a dumbbell joint in there. Again, good articulation. I just really like how this looks. So great effort there by McFarlane. I certainly hope you have enjoyed this review. If so, please like, subscribe, and tell a friend to do the same. Stay tuned at the end of the video for some articulation shots, and also remember to catch me on the Multiverse Musings vidcast available right here on YouTube. And I'll be back to the internet with more comic book related content soon. But until we meet again, this has been the Emerald Enthusiast, and thanks for watching.